all Israel will be saved. God's plan for Israel and the church is laid out in Romans chapters 9.
I knew what was coming with this. Good Lord. That doesn't surprise me at all. I only had to watch 30 seconds for that to reveal a lot. So that's the kind of person. So yes, as you say, that's the kind of person we're working with.
So I pulled in my partner Katie here, and she is going to react to something that I've already seen. So I wanted to get her raw reaction because she's a teacher, and so this is relevant for her. This is called, I quit teaching, out of control students get 0 consequences with PBIS, restorative circles, and BIST. Now, I don't know what any of those words mean. That sounds like some liberal alphabet nonsense to me, like LGBT. But hey, maybe our teacher friend here, Katie, the resident teacher, knows what those things mean and can appropriately react to this video.
I know what PBIS means, and I know what restorative circles are. I don't know what BIST is. So that one will be a new one. But I know what the first 2 things are. I've used the first 2 things, or I've been told to use the first 2 things.
All right, let's go.
Hi friends, this is Trish and welcome to Teacher Therapy. Today we're going to be talking about a much requested topic, and that is the topic of why modern school discipline programs like PBIS and BIST and so many others just do not work. I think that we can all agree that the quality of parenting has changed. Therefore, I hate to say the quality of kids, but the moral development of kids that are coming into our classrooms are at a totally different place. In some other time, far, far away, it was kind of understood that, you don't cuss the teacher out, you don't throw a desk across the room, you don't wear clothes that resemble a bathing suit, you don't yell and scream and try to intimidate people. Like, all of these things, it used to be kind of understood by the time you got to school that you just don't behave that way. It was almost unthinkable in certain eras. And even in
Okay, so first of all, so far everything that she's saying I agree with. I know this is literally just the intro and it's been 53 seconds.
You agree that there was a time that it was understood that you behave in school?
Yeah, I do, because
so what about like all those greaser kids who would like smoke during recess and like pull up the nerds underwear and throw desks across the room? That was like in the 60s.
Yeah, are we living in the 60s right now?
No.
Exactly.
When you say there was a time that it was just generally understood that you behave in school, I take issue with that.
Why?
Because there wasn't a time that it was just generally. Like, there's always been misbehaved children.
Yes.
And in fact, it used to be worse.
Yes, but here's the thing.
So why do you agree with that?
Because if I went to school and a child did any of those things, I never saw that child in my class again. And that was as a student, okay? That was as a student. I didn't see kids like that stay around in school.
So you're basing that on personal experience?
Yeah.
Not on objective data?
Do you want me to do this?
Yes, we're doing it.
But here's the thing,
I'm challenging your perspective.
Okay, let me ask you this. Do you think I want to be told I'm a bitch by a 13-year-old every day?
No, but why?
Exactly!
But do you think that there was ever a time when that didn't happen?
I think that there was a time when there were actual consequences for those things.
In your personal experience.
So there shouldn't be consequences for that.
No, I'm saying that you're thinking within your own personal experience when it is objectively true. There have always been children who call their teachers bitches, who throw desks across the room and don't get in trouble for it. That's always happened. And it used to be worse.
But see, I'm not seeing the effects of that at all. Like, that's not
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You personally did not see the effects of that. So you're
No,
not...
because I have kids who came into my class for the first 4 weeks of school and told me to fuck off for no reason.
Listen to the words that I'm telling you. She is saying as a general broad rule, she's stroking with a broad brush across all schools in the US, that there was just a time that was better for teachers. There was just a time where teachers had better control over their children. Do you agree or not?
No, I agree that there was a time when parents would send their children to school with the social skills to not be an asshole.
And you overwhelmingly think that that used to be a better situation in the United States broadly.
For my personal mental health, yes.
No, not your personal experience. Broadly.
That there was a time when
children behaved better in school across the country.
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
That's fine. That's fine.
I just look. You're asking me to react to this.
Okay.
Because what I see, she's right. It doesn't work.
Okay.
None of it works.
Okay, keep going.
I got yelled at by a 13-year-old child because I told him, "Hey, you did some stupid shit, and I'm gonna be writing you up for it." And he told me to go fuck myself, and was like, I had a student tell a coworker that they hoped her baby died.
Okay.
Because she asked them to do some work.
I'm gonna try to explain this one more time.
This is difficult for me to not be emotional about. I'm really sorry. There's a lot.
But you do understand what I'm saying, right? Where there is always broadly a problem with that. And just because you grew up in a school district where that was not a problem doesn't mean that across the United States, there was a problem with that.
I'm sure that no, here's the thing. I'm sure it was a problem. Okay? I'm sure it is, and it is still a problem. But here's the thing. Kids were given consequences for those things. If I was in school, listen to me. If I was in school and a kid got up and told the teacher that they hope they died in a car accident, that student would never be in that teacher's class again. I have another coworker who a student told him that he hoped he died and threatened to do the deed himself. And that kid showed up to my coworker's class the next day.
Okay, that's a lot. I got that that's really bad.
And we're still told to do things like the stuff that she hasn't even gotten to talking about.
Okay, we're not even a minute in. Let's keep going.
2023, if you were to go to other countries, other cultures, maybe even different sub-regions of countries, you will find that some way, somehow, they've retained a lot of those values. But there are other pockets and other regions that kind of look like a zoo. I don't know how to say what it looks like. It just looks like chaos and complete mayhem. And strangely enough, those out of control schools are the very ones that gravitate toward these kind of new age discipline philosophies. Now, before I get further into the video, I kind of want to talk more about them specifically, like PBIS and BIST, B-I-S-T is another one that was actually really popular in my region, but I haven't seen it as popular nationally. But I want to talk about them more in case a few of you have no idea what I'm talking about. And I'm going to overgeneralize here. So if you have a school that is using PBIS and it works amazing, please let me know in the comments. But basically, in general, a lot of these programs have completely gotten rid of like any negative consequences. So just for fun, I did a little poll yesterday about whether or not people think corporal punishment should be brought back. And unfortunately, it was one of those timed surveys. I didn't know how to take that option off, so it disappeared after 19 hours. But people actually voted more highly in favor of bringing back corporal punishment, but it wasn't as big of a gap as I thought. I want to say maybe around.
That is something that I want, that I'll just say right now, no. Okay. I don't want that at all. Okay. Absolutely not.
That's the big thing, okay.
Yeah, no. I definitely never ever want to see that happen. And if I was working at a school that decided, oh yeah, like we're instituting that, I'd be like, okay, then I'm leaving. I don't care if you take my license. I don't care about any consequences. I'm leaving. I'm resigning. I don't care. I would never ever do that, ever.
My girl said quality of children. The quality of the children.
That's a little weird.
Yeah.
That's not what it is. That's not what it is. The kids are not the broader problem. They're not. There was a class I took in college about, it wasn't educational theory. It was about how to teach good reading strategies. I'm pretty sure it was this class. And the first thing my professor said to us on the very first day of class was, I want you to understand that the children are not well. And we were all like, yeah, we're part of the children that are very not well, actually. The kids still are not well. They're not. And it's not all their fault. They definitely make choices that are negative and that I do not approve of or condone. But that is part of a lot of other larger issues. I can be as frustrated with them as I want to, and I am often very frustrated with them and some of the behaviors that they display, but a lot of that is not their fault, because I've been on phone calls with parents where I hear them screaming at their child, telling them that, like, I'm gonna beat your ass later, and other stuff like that. And, you know, I've had parents that scream at me and tell me that, like, what I'm doing is not okay. I'm not a good teacher. I have no idea what I'm doing. Their child would never do this to me. So it's a very complicated issue, and so much of it is not the kid's fault. They make choices that I do not respect, that I do not condone. I've had several students this year who have been expelled or suspended for getting into fights that they did not need to get into, but it's not all their fault. They've been taught that it's okay to do stuff like that, and that's not their fault. And they do have to take accountability and responsibility for their choices, but at some point you've got to be like, we got to zoom out from the kids and focus on the wider, broader issues of it, because that's what it is. It's not all them. I'm frustrated with them every day. They make me want to pull my hair out in some way, shape, or form almost every single day when I'm at work. But I love them. They're crazy and hormonal, and you'd think when I ask them to do one simple assignment, you'd think I'd asked them to cure cancer with how much they whine and groan about the fact that they have to do work. But I love them. So much of it is not their fault, and I see these programs as a way of, like, just putting a Band-Aid over it and hoping that the Band-Aid sticks for long enough.
I think she sees it that way too. Do you agree with their conclusion?
What conclusion?
Corporal punishment?
Oh, about how it should be allowed? Is that the conclusion? Or
Her conclusion is none of these programs work, therefore corporal punishment should be back.
No.
Okay, there we go.
So do I even need to watch the rest of this?
I mean, I would like you to, but if you don't...
It's okay.
Okay.
No, we can keep going. If it gets to the point where I'm just like, she's being unreasonable, then... But just as a hard line, just no, I don't agree with or condone putting corporal punishment back in schools. I think that is part of the reason why we have adults who think that telling their kids to fight in school is okay. So there's that.
55% of people voted yes and the rest voted no. But these days, corporal punishment is not just considered like paddling a kid, although that is legal in 19 states. Writing lines can be considered corporal punishment. Walking laps and doing exercises can be considered corporal punishment. Just basically anything that would bring about any kind of physical discomfort could be considered corporal punishment. But anyhow, in all of these new systems, all of that stuff is completely gone. They call that punitive, and they say it's bad. In many instances, office
Does this
referrals
woman
are
never read a
completely off the
psychology
table, unless the
piece?
kid is
She's a
doing
teacher,
something so
former
serious
teacher.
the cops should get
I'm
called.
glad she's
And
a former
even
teacher.
things like taking away recess in a lot of these programs is a complete no-no. Now here's where it gets kind of weird. They say that they're rewards based in many ways, more so PBIS than BIS, but the way it really works out is it's not always the best behaved kids that are getting the most rewards like you would think. Oftentimes the worst behaved kids are the ones that are getting all of the rewards because that's a teacher's only recourse. So they're trying everything that they can do to try to motivate the worst behaved kids by saying, I'll give you 25 scholar dollars. I'll give you a bag of candy. I'll give you, a 15-minute.
I don't know. I'm sorry. That doesn't happen with at least in my experience, that's not how it works. The program as a whole, I feel, doesn't work, not because kids don't want rewards. They do. A lot of the kids I work with are not intrinsically motivated. They're extrinsically motivated. But the thing is, you have to draw a boundary. You have to be like, okay, like if you're having a tough day, if it's a bad day, if it's a day where you're feeling really jittery or whatever, then maybe we can try you standing by your desk and being able to like sway back and forth rather than sitting down. Because that's a lot of that's a big problem I have with a lot of my male students. Or my masculine students is they have a lot of energy. They're very, very jumpy and they want to move. And so after the first few weeks of school, I'm like, okay, if you're feeling really jittery, as long as you and I have a conversation about what the expectations are, you can stand behind your desk and you can sway. You might do a little like bouncing on the balls of your feet or rocking back on your heels. As long as you are behind your desk, you're not disrupting the rest of the class. You're not blocking anybody's view, which usually my kids are pretty good about being like, if they want to stand behind their desk, they'll just get up and go to a space where they're not blocking anybody's view from the whiteboard. So, but that's part of PBIS. Like, that is a positive behavioral intervention and support that causes negative behavior to stop. So she's really thinking about this in a very narrow sense. Like, it's essentially just a rewards-based system where you're just being like, if you do good in class today, I'll give you this. And part of it is that. I'm not going to deny it. There have been times where I've given my kids, like, I'll be like, if we get through the rest of this chapter, I'll give you, like, the last 15 minutes of class to just chill or something like that, It's it's not meant to be that. It's building in practices and interventions into the classroom itself that promote positive behavior. So she's already thinking of this way, way too narrowly. And
Don't worry, it gets even more narrow. It gets worse.
Really, does it? Oh, God. Oh, boy. I was excited for this, and now I'm not excited at all.
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I should have explained to you what you were going to be watching.
I intentionally did not ask you because I was like, you know what? I'm just going to see what happens. Now, see, here's the other thing. If I give a student the privilege of standing behind their desk in order to get some energy out and they abuse that, it's taken away. That's the consequence. That might not be something as being like, get out of my classroom, go to the office, blah, 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 or, whatever. It might just be something like, okay, you are clearly not able to handle that, so I'm going to ask you to sit down now. If that doesn't work, it may be that I move their seat to be by me, and I will work with them personally. If they escalate, then it might become, okay, now I have to put a referral in our online, like, behavior tracking system or whatever. If it continues, then that's a phone call or a message home. If it gets even more destructive, then at some point it no longer becomes my problem in my classroom. It becomes, I need help from a fellow teacher. I need help from someone out in the hallway. Please come get this student. They are disrupting and not allowing me to teach.
Point being, there are consequences for behavior.
Right.
Yeah.
I guess when I was talking at the beginning, I was speaking more on an admin level, not a teacher level, because from what I have seen, teachers are still very much willing to give out consequences where needed, even with things like PBIS, where we're trying to influence positive behaviors. It's really a lot of administration, I've noticed, that does not necessarily put their foot down as hard as they should on certain behaviors. Because, as I've said, when I was getting very emotional, as I've said, I've had students who have said horrible things to coworkers, and they'll be back in their classroom the next day. Or, they'll get suspended and they won't be in that teacher's class anymore, but there's no real follow-up after that. It's just like, okay, you come back from suspension, you're in a different person's class, but there's no conversation about, like, why that's not okay, I guess.
I can see where you're coming from, because it used to be they would just expel the kid. So now, and since they are not allowed to do that, they would just rather not do anything and leave them in the class.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's more of the angle I was coming from. I wasn't really making that clear. Clearly, her view of PBIS is very narrow. And in a way, I can understand why she might do that, because so often we as teachers we just get stuff piled on us where we're just like, do this, do this, do this, do this. You got to try this new thing. You got to do this new, like, form or whatever. And so you get very cynical about putting new stuff in. But she clearly does not understand, I think, the purpose and the process of putting PBIS into place. Right. So that's where I'm at now. So before, when I was talking right at the beginning, it was more of an admin thing than like a teacher to teacher sort of thing. I didn't make that very clear.
Sit in the teacher's desk pass, just whatever we can think of, honestly, to motivate the most challenging students, because we know we can't just say, fine, you're sitting out of recess, or fine, that's detention for you. That's not there anymore. So what actually effectively ends up happening in a lot of these scenarios is the best behaved kids that are like always quiet and never causing a problem. Many times those kids get passed over and all of the attention still goes to the most misbehaved kids. So in weird ways, it's almost like their negative behavior is reinforced reinforced. And in even worse scenarios, believe this or not, many teachers will believe it, the worst behaved kids, if you do dare send them to the office, they will actually come back with snacks. They had iPad time. They got to spend one-on-one time with the principal, building a relationship, and oftentimes
you must have had real shit admin. You must have had the worst admin, because admin, that's no. You just must have had a really bad admin team, hun. Oh, and I'm very sorry that you did. I really am, but no. If your principal is doing that, I can guarantee you that there's a high turnover rate and that teachers are leaving left and right because they don't want to deal with that BS. I can almost guarantee it.
Times talking about how horrible the teacher is. And again, weirdly enough, a lot of these systems aren't even being used the way they're supposed to be. They're just kind of getting used in crisis mode and bribe the kid mode. And even more so, the worst behaved students actually get rewarded. So even if you totally 100,000,000% disagree with corporal punishment, I want you to imagine how different classrooms would be if we brought it back tomorrow. And even if you took paddling off the table, let's say you mouth off to the teacher and you've got to do 20 push-ups, or you say, I'm not ever doing this assignment again, and you have to write lines over it. Or somebody came up with an amazing example in the comments of the survey yesterday. They said, why not bring back community service? Oh, you want to act up in the classroom? You get to scrub toilets with Dawn dish soap, of course. You know, we don't want any bad chemical.
Oh my God, please stop. We actually have done like a community service sort of thing at our school, but it's nothing intense. It's like a group of kids might have to wipe down the tables after breakfast is done, and they just get like
But is that punishment?
If you want to think of it in like the most positive and negative terms, yeah, it's a thing that they do for like destructive behavior.
I mean, I would have to look into it a bit. I'm mixed on that because to me, it just sounds like free labor from children, but
it's not just them doing it, I will say.
Okay.
Like, it's not just it's not just the students
the yearn
doing
for the mines, yeah.
Yeah. Oh God.
Next they'll be collecting coal for the fire pits in the school where they toss the naughtiest of children.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, no, but like when I was testing, I was doing makeup testing all last week in the mornings. No, basically it was just like every morning when I was testing, I would see like this really small group of kids, like a couple, I work in a middle school. So it was a couple like 6th graders, a 7th grader, and like an 8th grader or two. And then like 2 teachers and one of our cafeteria staff. They were all wiping down tables together. So like these kids had community service that they had to do for certain days, for a certain number of days, but they had adult help. It wasn't, we're getting these kids to do our job for us. So there was that.
Okay.
But you get to scrub toilets and help beautify your school. Now, I know some of you, like, your eyes are rolling so hard you've nearly been blinded, but a lot of you guys are cheering right now like, yes, bring it back. Because we know, whether you agree with it or not, at a deep internal level that it would work. And that's the problem with all of these kind of ivory tower, loosey-goosey discipline things. They sound amazing, maybe to some academics that haven't even had to substitute teach a real public, K through 12 school, like maybe ever, but at least not in the last 30 years. These philosophies sound so good to them, but they are removed from the actual day-to-day realities of what teachers are going through and what a joke these modern systems have become. I think the thing that people have forgotten, and this might be a controversial point to some of you, but a lot of times kids, if undisciplined, untrained, untaught, unparented, they actually turn out to be tiny little monster people. The worst of humanity that is inside all of us, if not somehow disciplined away through love and care and support and concern and...
What? Wait a minute. Wait a minute. So it's like she's talking like these kids can never be turned around. Like if you fuck up as a parent in any way, shape, or form, your child's just gonna be like the next.
It's over. Try again in the next life.
Yeah. Like, girl, have you never heard the phrase, it takes a village to raise a child? Like, parents have a big impact on their kids, obviously. Whether they are there for their children or absent from their lives, big impact either way. But, like, there's more in a kid's life than just parents that actually like do the parenting bit. I have no problem with saying that like each of the teachers that I had in school from the time I was in preschool, which I don't remember that well, all the way up to 12th grade, all of those people had a small sliver in the job that was raising me, because I wouldn't have the profession I have if it wasn't for my mother, who's a teacher, for my junior year English teacher, or for my senior year English teacher. My fourth grade math teacher, actually, who was one of the first people to tell me I was a good writer, surprisingly. She was great. Mrs. Sanders, I love you. You're awesome. Like, the parent should play the largest job in raising their child. They had the child. But that's not always the case. And so, like, the teacher plays a role in that, the parent and or guardian plays an even larger role in that, but you seem to be under the impression that it's all the parent, which is not the case. But, like, there are stories of teachers who have become, like, second parents to their students because of, you know, the rapport and the relationship they managed to build. And that's fine. That happens. I will say that's not really the rule. I would say that a lot of those stories we hear are very much exceptions, which is not a bad thing. That's just how I see it. So, but she seems to just be under the impression that the parents are wholly responsible for their children, which is true and also not true. That if the parents fuck up in any way, shape, or form, the child is just going to give in to their worst impulses and become, I don't know, the next Antichrist from how she's talking. And I think it's really demeaning of her to assume that children, even as children, cannot choose to make a positive change in their own lives. I think that's insulting to children as a age group. Yeah. Even more so, I would say, to the age group I teach, because I mean, I have kids who have raised their siblings, which is not okay necessarily. That's a whole other issue. Like I said, this is complicated.
People like this don't want children to have agency is the problem. They don't. Right. They just want to control them and live vicariously through them.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I would say so.
Talking, and yes, consequences. If that doesn't happen, then the worst of humanity gets embodied in these little people. They lie, they cheat, they scream, they hit people, they bite, they spit. And depending upon how that is or isn't handled when they're young, those behaviors can either get worse and more apparent, or they can get sneakier and more manipulative and learn to hide them better. And in a weird way, what I think a lot of these discipline philosophies do, since they focus so much on like, okay, let's sit in a restorative circle and talk about our feelings. Let's process with a counselor and talk about why what I did hurt other people. A lot of these kids get to be masters at manipulating adults. And I've just been floored at how sometimes some of the worst behaved children in the classroom have administrators and counselors completely fooled because they learn quick to adapt and how to play the game.
Again, you must have had a shit administrative team, because mine knows all the tricks. Like, you must have just had a really shit admin.
Like maybe ISS or out of school suspension. Kids learn how to manipulate their way out of those and hide their misbehavior even better. Meanwhile, because
here's the other thing with that, with her saying that kids just manipulate. They do. I've seen it happen. Here's the thing though. You as an adult with your hopefully mostly developed prefrontal cortex and the rest of your brain can probably figure out that you're being manipulated. And if you give in to that, you are part of the cycle and part of the problem. So, and that's a lot of where the adult problems come in, is because you'll have one teacher that gives in, and then that kid gets away with stuff with them, and then they try to get away with stuff with all the other teachers and whatnot. And even my students try to play me against other teachers all the time when I'm like, no, you can't do this, or no, you can't do that. They'll be like, well, this teacher lets me do that in their room all the time. And I'm like, I guarantee you 100% right now, if I called them and asked them, do you let this student do this stupid thing in your class? They will tell me no.
Yep.
So if you as the adult are giving into that manipulation, you are part of the cycle and part of the problem. So from everything she's saying, it just sounds like she had a really shit admin team, and that she had really shit coworkers who let kids get away with stuff and then left her to deal with the problem. I'm not saying that that's her experience. I have no idea what her experience is, but I feel like that might be the reason behind why she has these rancid opinions at the moment.
I was just going to say, you're being very generous. You're being and not in a bad way. You're just being extraordinarily forgiving. In my opinion, I'm not saying you're forgiving her. I'm saying that the backstory that you're building for her. First of all, it does make sense. But second of all, I like the position that you're coming from because it's giving her the most leeway that you can possibly give her without forgiving it.
Yeah.
You know?
What she's saying is not okay. And again, it's very insulting.
This is exactly why I wanted you to react to this, because I feel like this is a good, you've come from the shit, so know.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to get, and you've worked with some of the worst, I feel like. So
in my own experience, yes. In my own experience, I have.
So you can, even with your experience, understand that this is not it. Yeah. This ain't it, Chief.
This ain't it. The place she's coming from, I can understand how she got there, if that is in fact the way she got there. If this is the way that she was just thinking beforehand, girl, why did you take this job? You should have become a freaking prison warden or something instead.
True.
Honestly, if the way you're going to approach teaching is without empathy and without being willing to adapt and change, get out of the profession. Because it's always going to be changing. And and even as it changes, you always have to be holding empathy and sympathy for those kids in your heart and a little bit of compassion. You have to have that. You can't not be a teacher without that. Because then if you have none of that, the kids will hate you. Your coworkers, when you try to vent to them about the kids hating you, will be like, what are you doing? And you'll tell them and they'll be like, wow, that doesn't sound very supportive of you. And then they're not going to agree with you either. So it's really interesting that you would go into a service profession where you work with people constantly and just kind of be like, nothing we try works. I'm not going to try anything. I'm just going to be horrible and mean to children for as much as I possibly can. If she went into the profession not having these attitudes and came out with them, then she was just in a really shit system, which unfortunately is not uncommon.
As a culture and a society, we have changed the definition of right and wrong so much. Kids are being empowered in their misbehavior. I actually saw a video from a college. Maybe I saw this about I think it happened maybe about a month and a half ago, but this lady, this young woman, was yelling at her college professor, cursing at her, refusing to follow directions, and she had campus security called on her to remove her. And somehow, of course, those kind of videos go viral. In all the comments, everyone was talking about how the teacher should have been fired. The teacher is so terrible. How dare the teacher do this and that, completely ignoring that even if that professor was wrong, the way the student handled the situation was wrong. But we're living in a culture, for whatever reason, that says if there is any kind of...
Does she just hate students in general? Because I just think she doesn't like students at this point. Oh my God. Oh, that's wild when folks who are terrible with people want to go into some type of hospitality field. My ex wanted to go into nursing, but didn't think we should provide elderly with care because they are a, quote, drain on society. He flunked out, thankfully. Thank God.
Yeah, thank God.
Thank God for that.
It's funny because we're in a unique situation when I'm a nurse and she's a teacher. Both of us see so much similar shit. Yeah. Where it's why the fuck are you a teacher? The same way I'm why are you a nurse? You don't give a shit about these people. If it's all about money for you, go into finance. Yeah. Go be an office junkie.
Yeah. If you are not prepared to interact with people in a positive way, please don't join a service or hospitality field. Yeah. It's not for you.
No.
It's for me.
Don't believe the lies. Don't believe the lies. You will not make a ton of money doing what I do for sure.
Definitely not doing what I do.
Definitely. Well, there's no lies about that. Mostly, I think people who become teachers and are assholes about it, either they feel like they were forced into it by their parents or something, or they just wanted to control people. And both are equally shitty reasons to go in.
Yeah, absolutely. So. But yeah, she just sounds like she doesn't like students in general. And I find it so interesting that she provides no context as to what the student was yelling at the teacher about or what the situation was. Now, I think that when you get to college, you have a certain level of responsibility to yourself to know that if you are in a class that is not jiving with you, it's very easy to withdraw from that class, actually. Now, there are, of course, deadlines, and every university has its own different thing, and it may be harder at some than at others. But you as a student in a college setting anyway, should have enough knowledge of yourself at that point. Not all the knowledge about yourself, but at least enough knowledge about yourself to know you're in a situation that's going to emotionally trigger you into a more volatile reaction than you would normally have. You need to remove yourself from that situation. But again, interesting that she provided no context. Love that. Context? What context? Some people want to go into care work because they want power over other people who literally can't object. They see these people as easy to control. Yep.
Kind of injustice. You can riot, loot, burn, hurt people, just do whatever you want in the name of like, this thing shouldn't have happened. So now I'm going to do 50 things that shouldn't happen. And my 50 things are canceled out because this one wrong thing really did happen. And that is the mentality that our young people are being brainwashed with. And unfortunately, they are not getting a lot of really great adult examples, even with the so-called Karen phenomena of like all these viral videos of people just chewing out customer service workers, airline workers, any public servant whatsoever. It's always that, oh, this one little thing happened that was wrong, so I completely went ballistic and lost my mind, and now I'm a hero. And I am really afraid that we are actually reinforcing that in school, because a lot of times the conversation goes even with the teacher. If a kid loses their mind in class and goes crazy, they come back to the teacher and essentially say, well, what did you do to make that kid so upset? What could you have done to prevent that kid from becoming so upset? What can you do in the future so that the kid won't be so upset? And
again, this is an example of shitty admin. Now, a good admin would be like, clearly you and this student had a disagreement. And they will ask you in some extreme cases, what led up to it? What did you do? What did the student do? And this is to get a better understanding of what set both of you off. Because that's the thing with being a teacher, is I can remain cool, calm, and collected through most situations. It takes a lot to push me to my breaking point. Now that is because the last 2 jobs that I had,
God is not done with Israel.
You said a short detour. This is 3 minutes.
Oh boy. Well, I can just look at the title and tell you that
and all Israel will be saved. God's plan for Israel and the church is laid out in Romans chapters 9 through 11. Before I go any further, I want to clarify some of the most commonly asked questions that I get. So number 1, I want to reiterate that the church does not replace Israel. Some people say anytime you look in the New Testament,
I knew what was coming with this. Good Lord. That doesn't surprise me at all. I only had to watch 30 seconds for that to reveal a lot. So that's the kind of person. So yes, as you say, that's the kind of person we're working with. Spare the rod, spoil the child. Yeah, some relevant background info. I feel you. It sounds like from her experience, she either came in a born cynic without empathy or sympathy, or that she just had a really negative experience and it impacted her in the worst possible way.
Meanwhile, the kid is sitting there feeling justified and awesome and really happy with themselves about how they won another one. And they can even convince themselves that they are like true freedom fighters fighting all their teachers. There's also a huge sense of entitlement getting bred, I think, in this generation, and schools are feeding into it, because in a lot of these, professional developments we have about all these random different systems, it's all about, well, give the kid a choice. Don't tell the kid no. Find 3 yeses before you ever have to resort to a no. Did they not like what you're doing? Well, why not? Why wasn't it more fun and engaging and entertaining? And so again, all of the responsibility is being put on the teachers to create this like mega fun, enriching environment where everybody is doing things that they think are so incredibly interesting and awesome. Yet meanwhile, they're like piling on these super rigorous state standards and loads of super challenging standardized tests and saying, oh, by the way, make sure the kids can do all of these things, while having an outrageously fun time at the same time. Oh, and having a really well-controlled, well-managed classroom. Good luck.
Now, here's the thing with that. So what she's saying I've experienced, where I have had professional development people come in and be like, you have to make learning fun. And I think you have to, partially as a teacher, you have to be like, you have to make this fun for yourself because you are the one teaching it. So you have to find a way to make it entertaining for you And if you can do that and you can look like you're having a good time trying to teach it, some of that kind of rubs off on the kids. Not all of it, and it's not perfect, and it does not always work, because there will always be things in education that students find boring. In every single subject, it does not matter. But I don't think that it's unreasonable, knowing what we know about the way students' brains work and how the human brain develops. I don't think it's unreasonable to ask teachers to diversify their learning. I don't think it is. She seems to be under the impression that every time something in education is changed, it's a personal attack on her and how she wants to do things.
You're on the right track.
Yeah. So there's nothing wrong with asking a teacher to diversify their learning.
And so you can see again why teachers are just quitting in droves. Another problem with like these kind of programs like PBIS and BIST is that the entire premise that they're built on is that the only reason a kid ever misbehaves is that they don't understand the expectation or they lack the skill to follow through with the expectation. And could that be true sometimes? Of course. But more likely than not, my kids could have written a 5-paragraph essay on each and every rule and why we have it and what happens when people don't follow it. But at the end of the day, if there are no punishments at all for not following the expectations,
students to do that, it's no wonder that they hate you and don't want to be in your class.
And then when they're rewarded by bad behavior, you're actually reinforcing the behaviors that you don't want to see. Another huge problem I see, not only in schools with a lot of modern parenting, is that kids are starting to really lack having a correlation between their choices and their behavior and actual consequences. And really, that's at the heart of the reason for any kind of punishment or discipline.
Wow, she had a shit school. She just had a really shit school that she was at in the most generous story of her life. She was just at a really shit school because, wow. Like, what she said with, like, about the entitlement and everything, like, you realize schools, in a lot of cases, actively combat that entitlement, right? Because I have students come to me like, what can I do to raise my grade? Can I get any bonus? Because I have a D, I have an F or a D right now and I don't want it. And I'm like, did you do the work? No. Then there is nothing I can do for you. That's their entitlement, and that's me setting that boundary of, no, you're not going to get what you want because you give me a sad little face. You didn't do your work, so you will get the grade you get. Now, that's me combating that entitlement. There's only so much I can do to combat that entitlement. Again, parents have the majority of responsibility to their children. So if the kid goes home and gets whatever they want at home and they bring that energy into my classroom, they're not going to get what they want in my classroom. Not unless they put forth the effort to get what they want, whether it be a grade or a reward or whatever. But at the same time, if I have to fight through their entitled attitude every time I tell them no, then that's a whole other separate issue that I don't have a ton of control over, because guess what? I don't go home with that kid. My job ends at 2:30. I come back here. I sit up in my room and I play games on my Switch, and I don't care about what those kids are doing until I have to wake up at 5:45 the next morning, get a shower, and go get ready and get to my building by 7 o'clock. Like, my job ends at that time. And then it is the parent's job or the guardian's job or whomever. And again, she's generalizing these really, really complex issues. She's just generalizing these really complex issues.
Or whatever you want to call it, if the idea goes that if when a child is small and they get consequences and they associate bad choices with some kind of pain, that will eventually internalize that understanding, and they won't do big things wrong in the future that lands them in big trouble, like being in jail, for example. Of course, some people never learn this, but that's another video altogether. Another huge emphasis of a lot of these programs is the fact that students should never feel embarrassed, never feel any sort of shame about any kind of behavior, never be singled out publicly, and never really kind of be scolded or reprimanded. I remember in the program BIST that I had in multiple different schools and districts, our main catchphrase when we talked to a kid was to constantly remind them over and over again, I'm not mad and you're not in trouble. I'm not mad, you're not in trouble. I'm not mad, you're not in trouble. And I mean, like, literally, we were told this over and over again. Make sure the kids know that you are not mad and they are you're not in trouble. And so
I
like,
would
what is
love
that
to
really
know.
teaching kids?
Where
Like
were
a kid
you?
cusses me out and throws their lunch tray across the room.
I feel like her primary thing is she had to not be mad. Like she was trained to not be mad at the kids because you're not supposed to be mad.
By
like
whom? I've literally like not even in college where no.
Well, I mean, sure.
I was
teach
never
something
told
about emotional control or something.
Well, yeah, obviously, but it was never a thing of like you have to it was never a thing of you have to keep all your emotions right here and then one day you'll die. It was never that. It was like you're going to get pissed at kids. You need to do your best to keep control of yourself, but you are human. Things will happen.
And she took that as don't be mad.
Don't be mad at all, which is ridiculous.
And I'm supposed to say, I'm not mad. You're just awesome. No, that is so not real life. A student is allowed to say or do whatever they want to me, essentially. And I'm supposed to say, you're not in trouble. I bet you just really didn't understand the impact that your actions would have on me. Let me sit down, explain it to you, and let's have a conversation about it. And how well do you think that went over? The kind of kids that will cuss and throw and flip out, there's not a whole lot of reasoning that's going to stop that behavior. That's my unpopular opinion. Now, to me, that is not to say that you should not try to do everything before getting to the more serious consequences. I still think we should talk to kids and explain things, but I think that there's got to be teeth that go along with that whole system, or else again, it becomes a joke. Now, I've got to pause because I know that there's just a few mama bears out there that are just kind of imagining the worst scenario they've ever seen or heard of in a classroom and thinking that I'm
just
advocating
imagining
for
what
that.
you're telling me, honey.
I'm absolutely not. I really, really do think that what has happened is the pendulum has swung all the way over. I think we've all, seen movies or heard stories of like maybe somebody that went to a really strict Catholic school and, a kid accidentally knocks their book off the table and then the nun comes and smacks them on the knuckle with a ruler. I'm not talking about going back to that time, but what I am saying is that somehow we've gone from that in certain places all the way to what we have now. And now the teachers feel in that little story that I gave, like they're the kid that's just kind of like blocking and hoping that now 50 people don't metaphorically smack them with a ruler. Because that's how it feels being a teacher in a classroom of sort of hostile little people or big people if you're a middle school or high school teacher. It's like very unsettling because you know that there's just like this delicate ecosystem that could absolutely explode at any given minute and you really don't know what you can do in that situation. At this point, sadly, I think we're to the point where teachers are actually expected to raise kids and parent them inside of the classroom without any of the tools and time that their actual parents have. I just remember, I think it was with the BIS program, but
she keeps talking about these larger issues that are systemic very generally. And I find it weird because I feel like if you're a teacher, you should be very aware of those systemic issues. Because, yes, teachers are asked, as unspokenly asked, as part of the profession, to parent their students. Like, that's just an unspoken expectation. You are going to be something of a parent. You are not the primary parent, though. I think that years ago, or sorry, not even years ago, I think the narrative around teaching that's been created through like inspirational stories of like the worst student ever who got turned around by this one teacher in his life have created a lot of that false narrative that you are supposed to be able to change any student's life at the drop of a hat, and that's not gonna happen. You are a human person. You are one human person. And you can have a big impact on a student's life. There is no denying it. Those stories would not exist if that was not the case.
So this is a common tactic that is used by conservatives.
Oh, what?
That she's using.
Oh, okay.
She is, well, it's, no, you're spot on. I'm just putting in my 2 cents.
Mm-hmm.
So what she's doing is she's taking a broader issue that most people know about and she's giving a very simple but incorrect solution. Okay. So there's a nugget of truth. So take, for instance, homeless people. Mm-hmm. All right. We all know there's homeless people and we all know there's a problem with it. So what's the leftist solution? House them, right? Mm-hmm. Obviously. Right. What's the conservative solution? Toss them in prison or kill them, right? That's the conservative solution. And so they take these problems. And another example I was going to say, I forget. I can't remember right now. But what she's doing though is we have issues with teachers, right? There's a bunch of shit she pointed out, but like just for instance, children are misbehaved. What do? You can either fix their circumstances at home with systemic changes or beat them half to death. And so she's going with the latter option because it's simpler, it makes sense to these conservative brain-rotted fucks, and that's what's helping her push her agenda.
Right.
So yeah, that's
that
my
makes
2
sense.
cents. Yeah.
Oh, I was so hopeful at the beginning of this video. Now I'm just annoyed.
Yeah.
So hopeful. Was like, oh, cool. She's gonna talk about why it doesn't work because the communities, the communities are affected by so many more systemic issues than just like needing positive behavior supports and everything. No.
The other example.
Damn it.
The other example I was going to give is mass shooters. The leftist solution usually is gun restrictions. The conservative solution is, when they say mental health, what they mean is open up the asylums again,
right? Yeah.
And toss the crazy people and the R slurs back into the padded rooms where we never have to see or think about them.
Right.
Okay.
Eugenics.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Could have been PBIS, I don't exactly remember, but we were given this list of all of these skills that basically kids need to have, and it was literally all the skills that you're supposed to be taught at a young age by your parent, and we were expected to teach these kids all these skills, and anytime a kid misbehaved, the implication was that we hadn't properly taught that skill enough. Not that the kid just thought misbehaving was fun, like that could never be the option. It was always back to, oh, well, did they understand the expectation? They have the skills to really follow through on the expectation. Was your expectation too hard, too high? Let's talk about bringing those down and being more gracious. Yet for all the talk of grace with students, teachers are held to these like awful standards when it comes to data, test scores, and everything we do is tracked essentially. Now is also a good time to insert the grades conversation again. In case you've missed it on some of my other videos, there is a massive movement, at least in America, I don't know about other countries, to completely get rid of grades and to basically have just like mastery standards where either somebody is not meeting a standard, meeting a standard, or exceeding a standard. So you can't get an F on anything, you can't fail anything. Nothing is graded to go into a grade book with the exception of these kind of mini standardized tests that are called different things. They might be called benchmarks or just these like data team quizzes. And those are the only things that are tracked, but yet they don't affect whether a student can fail or not. In fact, like 99.725, I made that number up, % of kids just automatically get passed on to the next grade. And that to me is another massive thing that has changed since when I went to school. Like kids actually could be held back when I went to school, but there's been a massive movement against ever holding kids back anymore. So even the natural consequence, or if you want to call it a punishment, I don't know, of having to repeat a grade because you goofed around, didn't learn the content, didn't do any homework, even that's gone now. So just everything within.
She's also clearly very uninformed, whether on purpose or like by her own choice or by like just leaving the profession before trying to learn anything about how the higher levels of like administration work. The process of holding a child back a grade it's almost a year-long process because all that data that teachers collect that she's like bitching about, which don't get me wrong, me, a teacher, I've bitched about the data I have to collect, mostly because it means that I have to look at a bunch of screens for a long time and write things down or put things in a table. And that's hard on my eyeballs. It's not from a perspective of like, oh, I don't want to do this. This is stupid. It's more like I've been with these kids for 6-7 hours and I don't want to have to look at a screen anymore. I'd like to go home, please. All that data that teachers collect towards the end of the year, but like those conversations happen due to data that's been kept throughout the year. So like holding a kid back is not something that doesn't happen because we just want to move kids along. That certainly does happen. Holding a student back a grade is a full year-long conversation. Like it's something that you have to have so much documentation for. And you have to be able to see like that this kid is not going to thrive emotionally or academically in the next grade level due to the deficits that they already have. It is a long conversation. Even before talking about holding back a kid, like, did we try like an after-school tutoring program? Because some schools have that. Was there after-school tutoring? Did we think about getting them into maybe like an extracurricular activity, like a sport that would, you know, cause them to be like, you can't play if you don't have your grade up? Like there's so many avenues. It's like she doesn't know about all the other avenues, whether on purpose or just because she doesn't want to talk about it because she just wants to beat children. I don't know.
I mean, you can see the light in her eyes go very bright when
she hasn't talked about it in a minute.
I was gonna say when next time she brings it up, look at her. It like races through her mind the illustrious fantasy of smacking a child across the face until it's blue and black. Like, it's something she wants to do so bad.
And again, that just perpetuates the problem. Like, you are a part of the issue if that is something you want. Like, for those, like, 44% of people that are, like, in favor of bringing corporal punishment back or whatever the hell, you are the problem.
And she knows on some level.
You are the problem.
She knows on some level that her wanting to do that is bad, and that's why she's projecting that onto all the teachers. She's like, oh, we should all do this. Like, everyone wants to do this, of course.
In modern education, it almost feels like it's just conspiring to make it 100% impossible for teachers to actually do their job, which is why we're seeing the mass exodus of teachers leaving the profession.
That's not why we're seeing it. That's a piece of it. It's not why we're seeing it, you idiot.
Than usual. But just for action research, I read probably like hundreds of different posts from teachers like all over the internet that are more recent about experiences they're having with the PBIS systems and BIST and restorative circles. And it made me mad afresh for teachers, not only because it's getting worse, but it flooded back all the memories from the 8 years that I was in the classroom and just all the stress and angst and nonsense. And ironically, like my constant fear of being in trouble for something crazy.
Holy shit.
Meanwhile, like the kids were never fearful of getting in trouble over anything. So my public service announcement is discipline actually equals love. Somebody also wrote that in one of the comment sections of the survey yesterday, and I cheered. I was like, yes, yes. Because the truth is, what we are setting kids and teens and young adults up for is just a disastrous future. They're not going to be ready for the real world. And they're not going to be happy. The truth is, I don't know if you could think of in your own life the times where maybe you had a holiday or vacation and you literally did like nothing but eat Doritos all day and like, you know, hours of social media and hours of movies. Maybe that feels like a reward for like a day, but a life of that is actually miserable because there's tons of natural consequences that come along with that. And that's honestly what we're setting these kids up for. We're creating this artificial bubble where, you know, kids can like cuss out a teacher or somebody else and we tell them, I'm not mad, you're not in trouble. And the extent of their consequence is having a conversation, which usually actually is with somebody that kind of takes their side and, you know, says, yeah, that teacher was so mean, it was wrong. And then their teacher is in trouble at the end of it. So again, that feels like a triple victory for the kid, but we are not doing these kids any favors. I think we also need to make a return to reality. And that's the fact that people are basically motivated by two things in life, love and fear. And I think the modern push in academia is you've got to get your students to love you. You got to get your students to love their subject and then they'll behave. And that might be true in some instances, but
that's never been the case ever. I go into every single class I've ever taught. One of the things I tell the kids the first day, I love what I teach. I wouldn't be here teaching it if I didn't love what I teach. I am trying to get you to tolerate it. Tolerate it. Not love it, not even like it. Tolerate it. And for the most part, I would say I succeed at that. I have had kids who have come up to me at the end of the year and been like, you know what, I'm not gonna read as much as I've seen you read. Like I had kids one year who told me like, so you read a lot of books, right? And I'd be like, yeah. And I'm like holding a giant book in my hands and they're like, how long is that one? I'm like, it's like 850 pages. When did you start reading it? Yesterday. How far are you now? 250 pages or something like that. And you know, they'll tell me at the end of the year, I don't ever think I'll read like you. I don't think I'll ever like reading like you do, but reading's okay to me now. I feel like I'm better at it. Or I feel like it's not as awful. That's all I want. I have very realistic expectations. I teach a subject that's very difficult and very broad. English is probably the hardest subject to teach. I will not take that back. I don't care if you teach like freaking calculus or whatever. I don't care if you teach college classes. teaching English is the hardest subject to teach because everything is subjective. Everything is subjective. And you have to teach students how to talk about things that are subjective in an objective way. And it's hard. And my goal is not to get my students to love my subject. If they come out of it with that, great. I will cry tears of joy. Most kids come into my class having learned to hate reading because they grew up with dyslexia. Yes, she hasn't even talked about all the issues that, like dyslexia and dyscalculia that exist. Like, do you realize that these kids are so, like part of the reason why they freak out so bad is because either they've been told they're stupid, they have an undiagnosed neurodivergency of some kind that they've never had treated, or God only knows what the... Oh my God.
I'm fairly certain that she is either making this shit up or at least some of it.
Yeah.
Or she's just a paranoid freak and she should not like literally like teachers talking behind your back. Give me a fucking break. Like the only reason they'd be doing that is if you actually are a piece of shit.
Right.
You know,
like I don't talk behind the back of my coworkers who I like.
If everybody's talking about you behind your back, it's probably you.
That sounds like a you problem.
When it's one person, it's them. When it's everyone, it's
right.
You know?
Oh my God. Yeah, I don't talk shit behind the back of my coworkers that I like.
Yeah.
I say shit to their face.
So when you say they're fucking conspiring against you, there may be a reason for that.
There might be evidence for why.
I'd be willing to bet that she did not quit. She got fired. But
I
anyway.
at this point, I would also be willing to bet that.
Well, because it's very difficult to get somebody to love you, especially when you are an authority figure that's trying to get them to do work and get them to do hard things if they don't value that. But also, you just can't control that. I can't control as a teacher, like if students like me or not. That could be its own video. That was one of the hardest, most frustrating things for me as a teacher because, it's truly impossible. You can do one thing and one set of students will love it and a set of parents will think you're the best, and then the other half of the classroom thinks you're the worst person ever, and their parents agree. It's just so impossible. How people work. It sets teachers up on this hamster wheel of just burnout, all when it doesn't have to be this way. So I think realistically, if maybe a student doesn't love school,
me does not cause my
burnout.
My burnout is caused by a multitude of
I wouldn't say that like a kid's a bad person for that, but if they have no fear of anything happening, like being held back, not graduating, losing privileges at home, losing privileges at school, if there's no love for the teaching, the subject, nothing, no love for education, and no fear of consequences, what we're getting in modern schools is about what you would expect it would look like. Kids are angry, they're resentful, their parents back them up no matter what they do, and nothing bad's gonna happen to anyone except for the teacher if she dare upsets anybody. So I think it's just honestly, it feels like such a losing job for a lot of teachers today. And a job that they used to love when there was just some basic supports in place, it's now absolutely miserable. At least I'm speaking for myself. That is how I kind of ended up feeling. So my solution wouldn't be to swing from one pendulum all the way to the other side, but to try to have a more balanced approach where there are appropriate consequences.
Well, you see, she's not literally strangling the children. You see, she
just wants to hit them.
She's not burning them she's not branding them.
Then.
She's not giving them the ritualistic branding for wearing different colored threads that day. So it's actually fine.
Oh, wait, hold on. The more I hear you talk about teaching, the more I unironically wish I had a teacher like you when I was in school. I probably would have done a lot better. Stop. That's really nice. I'm a disaster. I really am.
Yeah, but you understand people.
I try to.
Right.
I really do.
You're empathetic, and that unfortunately is lacking in a lot of people.
That's part of the reason why I have so much burnout.
Yeah, I feel that.
Thank you, Avalon, and thank you, August Dexter. That's very nice. She's right. Teaching shouldn't be the way it is, but it certainly shouldn't be the way you want it to be. Absolutely. Absolutely. The state of education in this country is terrible. It just is. As a professional, I am doing my best. I am going to continue to do my best. I'm going to do what's best for my students, and I will participate in movements that will hopefully create change. And I'll do what I can to create that change. But I'm one person, and there's only so much I can do, and that's really the part that I have to make peace with. I do not have to make peace with the system that I am a part of. I can change that. I can help to change that system.
Negative, and that deters students. But there are interventions in between there, still relationship building, still kindness, still not advocating like any kind of abuse of any kind of course, but something that actually makes students feel some of the consequences of their negative choices. And the truth is, at the end of the day, we definitely need parental support more than any time ever. I know that there are some crazy teachers out there that go viral on TikTok and social media, and they're insane, but I can promise you that is not the vast majority of teachers.
No, it's not. You're not part of that vast majority.
That genuinely wanted to help young people live a better life through the power of education, and I'll stand by that. But the more nonsense that's created in education, the more those good teachers are actually going to want to leave and find something where they can really make a difference. Because most teachers at this point are just feeling like their hands are tied, and they're just actually the ones that are being punished by the education system in completely unfair ways. So that is my reasoning on why modern educational discipline practices like PBIS just are not working.
We started off on, I came into this like, I'm ready to be on this level. I'm ready to be on her level. I'm ready to be like, you're so right, you're so right, you're so right. And then it went downhill.
Yeah.
Very quickly. It went downhill very, very quickly.
I'm sorry for challenging you at the beginning.
No, it's okay. Like I said, I did not explain my perspective on that very well. It's very much an admin-based complaint than a teacher-based complaint.
Okay.
That's very much like my experience, like my own experience with my school, and yes, how I was raised, which was very privileged, I will say. And I'm recognizing that in retrospect to how I was talking about it, because let me tell you, if I had done any of the shit that some of my kids do when they're really pissed off, I'd be dead. None of you would know me. You wouldn't even know where I was buried. It'd be an unmarked grave. Like, you would have no clue I existed. The world would have had no clue I existed in any way, shape, or form if I'd done some of the things my students do. But I think a lot of the time, when consequences are not meted out in appropriate ways, it's not necessarily the teacher. In most cases, it's not. It's that you have an administration that is not willing to really put their foot down. And I've seen that happen even in this school year when I'm at this awesome place. I love my school. I love my job. I do. But there have been moments where kids have done they've had severe behaviors. They've said threats. They've started multiple fights. They get sent out of class every day. They skip class every day, and nothing's done. Not a lot is done. The teachers do all the documenting that we can do, but then the next step up doesn't follow through with what they should do. So at the beginning, it was much more of an admin-based complaint that I had with that than it was like a teacher thing. And like I said, in the most generous of worlds, in the most generous of backstories that this person could have, it sounds like she just had a school that did not mesh well. Like in the best case scenario, she was at a school that promised her, all of these things and how great it would be, and like you'll have this and this and da da da, and we have all these systems that we use, blah blah blah. And then she was put into a team of teachers that did not coalesce well, that didn't work together well, that didn't all follow through on the same things, and then an admin that perpetuated that, and then it allowed the problems to continue and to flourish. That's the most generous explanation for her current point of view. The other side of it is she came into this profession wanting to control people and not understanding how children work. They're humans learning to be humans. They're gonna do stupid shit. You just have to accept that. I look over at my kids some days and I'm like, why are you doing what you're doing? Why are you the way that you are? And they'll be like, ah. And that's the answer I just have to accept, because they probably don't know. They probably don't know why they're doing what they're doing. They're impulsive. They're freaking teenagers, man. They're tweens and teens. They don't know half of what's going on in their brain right now. I'm like, my God, I'm going to do my damnedest to be like, you know what? What you just did right there, that's not cool. Let's not do it again. I try to be as patient as I can with them. But like, even I have a breaking point. My kids have seen me cry once this year. I wish it was 0. But the year before this, was like 4 or 5 because my work environment was terrible. And this year it's been once. And it was actually quite effective because a lot of my students were like, oh, damn, oh shit. And they've never done it again. But yeah, they're in a glass box of emotion. There's so many factors. Like, it's not just puberty. It's not just their parents. There's so many factors. And she glossed over like all of them. Yeah, be a person. Don't be a robot in front of your students. Be a fucking person. They respect you more if you're a person. When I came into the school year, after I told them my whole deal about I'm not trying to get you to love English, I'm trying to get you to tolerate it, I was like, guys, I'm a giant nerd. They have found out over the course of this year that I watch anime. So yes, my kids make me want to tear my hair out, and sometimes I look at them and I'm like, I wish you were any way other than the way that you are right now in this moment. And then there are other days where I'm like, never change. Please be this way forever. You are so sweet and precious. I have a couple ace kids at my school and they got so excited when they found out I was too. Yes! Oh my gosh! I actually walked into a bathroom. I walked into one of the bathrooms while testing was happening because I thought I heard some kids being stupid. And on the inside of one of the stalls, it said trans rights, aro ace rights, gay rights, like just in a row with a heart around it. And I was like, I don't condone vandalism, but I do condone all of these sentiments.
Nice.
So it's very nice. Okay, I think I'm done.
Okay.
Heroic vandalism, yes, indeed.
If you're watching this on YouTube, thank you so much for watching. Please be sure to hit the like button if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe if you want to see more. Hit the notification bell to be notified when I upload. You can join my channel membership at youtube.com/AlecGuntherTTV/join for only 99 cents a month. That's less than the price of a blowjob from your mom. You can be part of the channel membership program and you will get early access content as well as a sweet badge next to your name and exclusive emojis in the comments that nobody else gets. Thank you again, and I will see you all in the next video.